It is the Suns taking on the Pellies without Devin Booker, another star that is down for them, just like the Bucks here, as we mentioned with Middleton. Things have flopped. I think the last time we talked about these series lines, it was minus 2,500, maybe 26 for the Suns. Take off about 1,300 of that and get it down to about minus 295 on the series now for Phoenix at a 1-1 tie. And New Orleans plus 230. It was, I believe, about plus 550. So there's some reason to believe in them now just because of the way that Ingram looked. CJ continues to look efficient all over the place in terms of his scoring and his other stats as well in terms of those rebounds and assists, which are noticeable. So we're obviously starting to look at what do the Suns do without Booker, and with the Pellies, I think it's about what do they do at home. Is there much of a difference? So with a pretty small line in this game, and the Suns still favored, and then a very small total. Well, I don't know what to call it small, but 216 does feel small in this one for two teams that can't put the ball in the net, but have been playing at a pace of about 95. So there's a bit of conflicting data. I guess, how do you look at this one, and what angles are you trying to find?
I'm staying away from the total. Like you said, it's a very competitive line that could go either way very easily. The way these teams both hit threes down the stretch in game two, and the Pelicans came alive, I'd be terrified to take the under. But the over, it does not really hit without Book. The Suns went under in 5 of their latest 7 without Booker. They went 3 and 4 straight up in those games, but Chris Paul also missed 6 of them. So I don't think you read in too much of that. Chris Paul now going to see what he can do with this supporting cast without his best complementary option. And I think the Suns are still good to win. I mean, this minus 295 indicates where Vegas thinks they're at, that they're not just going to fold because one guy's out. They've adjusted to this all season, and Book carried them when Chris Paul was out. And well, now with these shoes on the other foot, and CP3 has fresh legs because he missed all that time in March. So I think the Suns at minus 1.5, you are getting good value. This is still the most clutch team of all time in the fourth quarter. And that a lot of that is about CP3, not necessarily about Book. We highlighted some of his numbers against the Pelicans, handing out about 15 dimes per game in his last few regular season meetings. He had 14 last game. We know what he did in game 1, 30 points when he needed to score. And yeah, we just haven't seen the others that they like to talk about on the TNT. There's plenty of others for Phoenix. They're much better off the bench than they were last year, mostly because Cam Johnson is just a better player at this point. JaVale McGee is a much better backup big than they had. Cam Payne continues to get better. So, I mean, the Pelicans had a nice game, stood their ground to get one here. I don't know if Ingram can continue that kind of success against Mikal Bridges and company. And yeah, CJ is a problem for the Suns right now if they're going to use Bridges. I mean, they were using Bridges, I think, just as often on CJ, though, and could use Crowder or Cam Johnson on Ingram. But yeah, it's really a matter of can they keep Joval off the boards? Can they play the type of defense they played all season? I don't believe in the Pelicans. We've talked about it over and over. They shot 57% from 3 in game 2. And this is the second worst 3-point shooting team in the league all season. So I expect some regression from their offense, enough for this to be a close game down the stretch. And then I definitely favor the point guard and the most clutch team we've ever seen.
That we've ever seen. Yeah, and that's fair to call them that. I agree with you in a lot of ways. I think Brandon Ingram is normally a problem for a lot of teams, but his stats aren't blowing you. They don't blow you away, essentially, right? When he's been playing the Suns since they've been the Suns that they started, basically since last season when they got Chris Paul and became who they were. I mean, in his last roughly like 5 games or so against them, he is averaging 21 points, 5 assists, 5 boards. He's filling up the stats, but at the same time, he's got a couple of games in there with shooting percentages under 45%. One of them at under 30%. And it's interesting because I'm starting to realize what you're saying here. The game the last game in the regular season where he played against the Suns without CJ, 28 points in 34 minutes. With CJ. 28 points in 34 minutes because he's not being guarded by Mikal the Destroyer. So I don't like the matchup for the Suns if they put Crowder on Brandon Ingram, or if, I like Crowder, but I still think at this point, Crowder's a one-on-one defense. I don't think he can stay in front of a guy like Ingram and then get a hand up in his face enough to bother that shot. I also don't love Cam Johnson's, quickness when it comes to Ingram and his slitheriness and ability to get to the basket. So I think if they're going to put anybody but Mikal on Brandon Ingram, I think he's going to continue to cook. And to be honest, if I was Monty Williams, and I'm not nearly as smart of a basketball mind as Monty Williams, but my suggestion would be to switch that up and let CJ do a little bit more, especially because, once you put the ball in CJ's hands versus Ingram's hands, you've just taken away a 3-point shooter, who's a much better spot up 3-point shooter than Ingram. So I don't think you want to allow Ingram to get the ball one-on-one on the wing in a spot like he's KD, which is sort of his, the guy he models his game after to a degree. There's no good matchup there unless it's Mikal, honestly. So I think you go that route. I don't really want to touch the total, to your point. I do think there's some opportunity for some guys that you can pick out of the Suns lineup there and maybe find some prop value, just because we know that when Book's out, there's a few guys whose minutes go up in terms of, I'm looking at Cam Payne, Cam Johnson, or Ayton. One of those three, all of them go up in minutes. All of them go up in points. Cam Johnson noticeably from 11 points per game to 16 points per game with 5 more minutes in that stretch. He also gets an extra board and an extra assist. Then you got Cam Payne, and this is a reason that I also think CP3 goes down in productivity when Book leaves. He scores 1 less point, 1 less assist, 1 less board, 1 less 3-pointer made, all those for Chris Paul when Booker's out. I think it's at least in part because Cam Payne is now on the floor for 5 more minutes a game with CP3 as the 2-guard lineup, and it's 2 point guards now. Cam's getting 3 more points per game. He's getting 2 more assists per game. So you're putting a guy on the floor who has a lot more similar style of play to CP3 than when Book is out there to complement him. It's not like, CP3 is less effective. It's just there's another guy doing similar things to him that's taking away from his stats, but it's not necessarily taking away from the team's stats. 8 and 6 without him is not the winning percentage that you look for when you're a team that's 64 and an 18 on the season, right? That's just, it's a big dip in your win percentage without Book. I think it's interesting that when you were talking about they did it with without CP3 and Booker, I think we did not give Book the credit he deserves for what he did without CP3, and I don't think we realized the sort of slight shift in credit that we should be giving Book over CP3 at times, with how effective Booker is without CP3 on the floor. It's not that he doesn't need him. It's not that this team doesn't need him. It's just I think Book has proven that he's more important to this team. And it does scare me a bit. And I do see the slightest bit of value in a plus 230 series bet on the Pellies. But I want to see how this game goes, and I don't have the balls to do it. And if the Suns win this game and it does make me feel better about it, then the odds won't be there anymore and it's not worth it. So I'm not really looking to this game as a place for me to find some units, to be honest with you. We just got to be straight up about that. Like I said, I'm going to try to hit some props for some guys. And other than that, this game scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, if you bet the Pelicans plus 2,500, you got some value. True. And if you bet them plus 10,000 to win the championship, congrats on that. But yeah, I still don't think it's going to pull through. The Suns, if you doubt them, they just come back and they find a way. It's much like the Grizz were all regular season, and they were 9-3 against the spread as road underdogs. The Suns, they're -1 here. Dominant winning numbers because they're so clutch on the road. 32-9 straight up. Not a good record against the spread, but the average is 6 points per game margin of victory. 24-5 when the road favorites, a slight favorite here. Average is 8 points per game, the margin of victory. At the end of the day, I just trust Chris Paul to get this done. I trust the depth of the Suns, and I trust Monty Williams to make the proper adjustments. Again, Willie Green is still a new coach, and like we saw with the Nets, when you just have 2 good, I'm just going to slander Steve Nash real quick. When you have 2 good scorers and your game plan is let these guys go to work. Sometimes you run into a brick wall that is a good coach with a deep team that can throw a lot of different things at those two scorers. And I think the Suns come out and show that kind of defensive prowess in game 3.
I don't disagree, man, but this is the second video in a row I've heard you talk slander against Willie Green, and I don't think I'm going to let it go this time because he's a really, really good coach. I agree. Monty Williams is a better coach. Willie Green's a young coach. First of all, he's got that team bought in. The fact that without Zion and through turmoil throughout the season, before they even got CJ being so bad, getting CJ, who, look, CJ is a coach on the floor to himself, an amazing human being, could be a politician someday if he wanted to. So he's got to get some credit for helping that team out. But Willie Green has kept that team afloat. So I just want to shout him out because I
wanted to slander Steve Nash than
that's fair. That I will support because that man has not shown us any X's and O's that make me believe in him yet, other than KD catch. But I think Willie Green does have something to say about the way that he was able to utilize Ingram, the way that he's brought these two stars together. They have something. If they can get a squad together for next year, the way similar to the one they have this year, obviously add the ZW there, Zion, and see how that goes. I think there's something to be said for their future. I do agree with you. The Suns on the road, they're still super good. The Pellies at home as home dogs, which they are by, like you said, just a point, but home dogs, 8-18. Straight up. They lose by 4 points per game. They're 11-15 against the spread as home dogs, which at -1, you might as well just consider that 8-18 straight up the record you talk about. So there's not much to like with the Pellies in terms of their home, home dog stats and all that kind of stuff. And I do think the Suns pull this one out. It's the Suns in the fourth quarter, even if it's close. But we said that in this game too. We were all waiting for them to just pull it out. It was a big shock without Book. It's going to be a different game plan. They will be ready to go. Monty Williams is coach of the year. As much as I love Willie Green as a person and coach, Monty Williams is a better coach, and they'll be able to take this one down. So that is all the time we have for you. 3 fun games here on this Friday night. Hope you'll all be watching those games with us. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Continue to follow along with us as we bring you every single game during this postseason, even those weekend ones, which we weren't bringing you during the regular season. We're going to continue to bring those during the playoffs. So until we see you next, happy betting.